Neutral Station, Polaris. A place where aliens pass through and forget they have secrets. Tonight, a small human cantina glowed like a promise in the cold. Inside, Christopher Bell polished a glass. Had been a bartender 19 years. Had heard things. The rule was, whatever's poured here stays here. The door opened. A Tashran ambassador stepped in, Vrelan Kor. 40 is really to finish naturally and let the feeling finish naturally. No leaks, no slips. The galaxy called him airtight.
What do humans drink to relax?
Bourbon. It bites, but it settles you.
The bourbon stood on the bar, dark and patient. The ambassador watched it, and then he drank. His hand, pale and slender, lifted the glass. Had sipped poison before. This was different. The warmth unspooled in his chest. His shoulders, rigid for 40 years, dropped a millimeter. A door inside him, long seized, shifted.
It's soft, unexpected.
He had negotiated for 40 years without losing a secret. He was about to lose all of them in one afternoon.
Bourbon's got a way of surprising you. Most folk come back just for that first sip.
I've had stronger, but nothing that eases you so quickly.
38 years a diplomat. Vrelan Kor was a locked vault. No leaks, no mistakes. He docked at Polaris on a layover. An aide mentioned the human cantina. Local culture. He was curious. He knew humans drank ethanol. A recreational poison. The medical files had a note about Tashran enzymes. He hadn't read the footnote. Ethanol hit Tashran brains like a dam break. One glass could erode a lifetime of discipline, and he had no idea.
You get many Tashrans through here?
No, we tend to keep to ourselves. Bad habit. One drink won't hurt. The quiet here is different. Nice.
He didn't feel the door unlock. The warmth was already fooling him, softening edges he'd spent decades sharpening.
We don't get many diplomats who appreciate quiet. Most want a crowd.
I've had enough crowds for a lifetime. This is exactly what I needed.
The bourbon's warmth was no longer a visitor. It had moved in, unspooling tension from muscles that hadn't unclenched in years.
Negotiating treaties is 90% waiting, and the other 10, it's all pressure. No one ever tells you that.
Pressure's a weight. All right. Most folks unloaded a little at a time. No rush.
The alcohol was mimicking neurotransmitters his species had never evolved to regulate. His blood was singing a song his brain didn't recognize.
Strange. I am talking more than usual, but it doesn't feel like a mistake.
You give many speeches, or is it all backroom deals?
Speeches are just noise with a purpose. The real work happens where there are no microphones. Like here, I suppose.
The first glass sat empty. He didn't remember finishing it. His hand was already moving, nudging it forward. The door was open now.
Another.
Please.
Bell poured the second glass without ceremony. The bourbon caught the light, and the ambassador watched it like a man watching his own blood.
Light as water, heavy as memory. You ever notice how quiet command is? Everyone talks at you. No one asks how you are holding up.
Must be tough. All that responsibility. And you cannot share it with anyone.
Share it. I have spent 4 decades making sure no one even knows what I carry. It is the only way to survive.
The alcohol was dissolving the filter between his thoughts and his tongue. He did not notice the shift, but Bell did.
Why am I telling him this? He is a stranger, but it feels safe.
The second glass was half gone, and the ambassador's walls were crumbling, not from force, but from a warmth he had never been offered before. The second glass emptied itself. He wasn't counting anymore. The warmth had become a tide, carrying him away from the shore he'd always guarded.
You know, the Korthig reparations. Those hearings lasted years, but people still don't know half of what really happened.
Bell heard the shift. This wasn't a tired diplomat anymore. This was a man standing at the edge of a secret he'd spent a lifetime burying, without being asked. Bell poured the third glass. The quiet clink of the bottle against the rim was the only invitation Vrelan needed.
Some secrets, You carry so long, they become part of you. Then you forget you are even hiding them.
His eyes glistened. The bourbon had unlocked a vault, and the first thing that escaped was not a confession, but a tear.
I've sat in rooms where we decided the fates of millions, and I've never spoken a word of it. Not ever, until tonight.
Bell could have stopped pouring, could have asked a question that would shut this down. Instead, he stood there, present and silent, because that was what the ambassador needed.
Why does this feel like the first time I've spoken the truth?
The third glass was almost gone. The ambassador was still talking, and the bartender was still listening, and neither of them knew yet how much the galaxy was about to change.
The Korthic money wasn't just mishandled. It was taken, siphoned off for 60 years, right under the Senate's nose.
Bell leaned in an inch. Nothing changed in his face, but every bartender's instinct told him this was about to go very deep.
The Senate found a way to keep the credits flowing. We just never talked about it, never admitted where the money came from.
The bourbon had done its work. The vault door was open now, and 60 years of secrets were starting to spill out.
It became routine. Move the credits, bury the evidence, year after year. And no one ever questioned it. Stop talking. But the words keep coming. I signed the transfers myself. I told myself it was for the stability of Tashra, that the reparations would have been wasted anyway.
Bell did not flinch. He had heard worse. He had heard stranger, and he had never once repeated a word. That was the job.
Decades. I told myself that, and it worked. I almost believed it. But tonight I can't.
The cantina was silent, except for the hum of the ship's engines. 60 years of fraud hung in the air between two men, and neither of them was moving. A sob tore through the quiet. Vrelen's composure shattered, and the names began to spill out.
Drelith, Harsk, Vion. I know the account numbers by heart. KT7742, Alpha 19, IX8, 83, Gamma 42. I stared at them for decades. The funds were diverted through shell corporations on 4 moons. Korthic refugees never received a single credit. 60 years. 60 years of fraud. And I signed every single transfer.
Bell's hand was steady. He poured another bourbon, his expression unreadable, but his presence was a gift the ambassador didn't know he needed. The names and numbers hung in the air like a sentencing, but Bell simply placed the fresh glass next to the empty ones and waited. The cantina had become a confessional. The bourbon was the penance, and the bartender the silent witness to a lifetime of guilt, finally spoken aloud. Vrelen's head dropped forward. The bourbon had finally shut down the ambassador's iron control. Bell reached below the counter and pulled out a clean blanket. He'd kept it for nights just like this. He draped it over the sleeping Tashran, tucking the edges around his shoulders. No cameras recorded in the last round. It was a house rule, built into the ship's bones. Bell surveyed the empty glasses. Each one held a piece of a 60-year fraud. He could end a political dynasty before morning, could have senators arrested by noon. Instead, he picked up a clean glass and began to polish it. The motion was muscle memory. He had heard worst secrets over 19 years. He had never broken a single silence. The ambassador slept, and the bartender kept the silence, and the stars outside gave nothing away. Whatever had been said here stayed here. That was not a choice. It was the foundation the last round was built on. Hours passed. The last round's engines hummed, and Bell moved quietly through his morning rituals. He restocked the shelves, wiped down the bar, and ground fresh coffee as the first pale light slid through the portholes. The blanket on the bar stool rustled. A low groan escaped the bundle of robes. Vrelen's eyes cracked open. The light stabbed. His skull felt like a cracked shell. He pushed himself upright, the blanket slipping, and saw Bell with his back turned, steam rising from a fresh pot.
Morning, Ambassador. Coffee?
What happened?
Bell turned, a mug in each hand. His face was calm, as if the ambassador had merely dozed off.
Bourbon's a good listener. You had a lot to get off your chest.
Vrelin blinked, trying to piece the shattered night together. The headache was loud, but the silence in the cantina was louder. Then the memories hit. The names, the numbers, the 60-year fraud he'd vomited across the bar.
Drillith, Harsk, Vian. I named them. I gave everything away. No.
He looked at the blanket, at the empty glasses, at the man who had heard everything. Bell was just pouring coffee, like none of it mattered.
He knows. He knows everything.
Blackmail, arrest, the end of his family, his legacy. All the shadows he'd feared for 40 years were suddenly in that small room. He could not move, could not speak. The bartender approached, sliding a mug across the polished wood.
Black, or with a little cream.
He's not calling security. He's offering me coffee. Why?
The silence stretched. Bell's face gave nothing away, and Vrelin braced for the blow he was sure was coming.
You know what I said. What are you going to do?
Bell set the coffee pot down softly. When he spoke, it was without ceremony, the way you'd recite a law of physics.
Whatever's said here, stays here. House rule always has been.
Vrelin stared. The words were so simple, he didn't trust them.
You could end me. My career, my family, the entire Senate, and you are telling me nothing.
I am a bartender. I listen. I don't record, don't transmit, don't interrupt. Never have, never will.
The word never hung in the air. Vrelin had spent 40 years trusting no one. He didn't know how to start. Bell pushed the coffee mug a little closer. The gesture was small, but it said more than any threat ever could.
He means it. This human. He truly means it.
The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of something Vrelin had never been given before. Unconditional trust. Vrelin lifted the coffee mug and took a long, slow sip. The bitterness was clean, nothing like the bourbon. He set the mug down. The clink it made sounded like a period at the end of a sentence he hadn't known he was writing. Bell had returned to his work, polishing a glass as if the last 12 hours were just another Tuesday.
I will tell them, not because I must, because I can.
He stood, folding the blanket with care and laying it on the stool. Bell didn't turn around. He understood. At the door, Vrelin paused and looked back. Bell met his eyes and gave a single slow nod. No words were needed. The station corridor was cold after the warmth of the last round. He walked away without looking back again.
40 years I carried it. For the first time, it is not my burden alone to bear.
He didn't know what waited on Tashra. Arrest, disgrace, the end of his career. It no longer mattered. The silence of the last round had not been a trap. It had been a gift, and he intended to honor it. Vrelin did not pause. Within hours of landing, he submitted his resignation and requested an emergency session with the judicial authority.
My name is Vrelin Kaur. I am here to confess to 60 years of financial fraud.
He named Drellith, Harsk, and Vian, 3 sitting senators who had siphoned Korthik reparations for decades. He recited account numbers from memory, and the recorders captured every damning syllable. The scandal broke before the council could adjourn. Holographic headlines blazed across Tashra. Ambassador confesses to Senate fraud. The politicians scrambled, but the evidence was irrefutable. Arrest warrants were issued within the hour.
I have nothing left to hide. For the first time in 40 years, I am free.
1,000 light years away. A bartender polished a glass. He did not know what the ambassador had done, but he would not have been surprised. The Senate didn't fall that day, but its foundations cracked loud enough for the galaxy to hear. The investigation had only just begun. For Tashra, the true reckoning was still to come. Within a month, the Tashran Senate was a memory. The 3 senators were arrested, their assets frozen, their names struck from every honor roll. The 60-year fraud was dismantled. Korthik reparations were finally redistributed to the refugee settlements. Vrelin Kaur accepted a reduced sentence for his cooperation. He walked out of the courthouse a free man, lighter than he had been in 40 years. On the last round, a flicker of blue light from a news screen caught Bell's eye. He watched the names scroll past without comment. He polished a glass slowly, the same motion he'd done 1,000 times. The screen flickered to another story. He didn't react. He reached for a bottle, the same bourbon the ambassador had drunk, and poured himself one measure.
A bartender's never supposed to have a favorite customer. But sometimes,
He raised the glass an inch, a silent toast to no one and nothing, and took a sip. The bourbon was exactly as it should be. He didn't feel pride or regret or triumph. It was just another night on the last round. The Senate had fallen, but the silence held. Whatever had been said here, stayed here. It had always been that way. It always would. But Bell's silence was not an exception. It was the rule. Across the galaxy, Earth's hospitality industry operates on an unwritten code. What's shared in a human bar stays in that bar. It's a tradition older than spaceflight. Bartenders, innkeepers, cafe owners, all trained in a craft that values listening over exploiting. Word spread quietly. The reputation grew. Humans don't pry, but they keep what they hear safe. Now, 78% of galactic diplomats prefer human-run venues for their most vulnerable moments, not because humans extract secrets, because they don't. The last round was just one of thousands of such sanctuaries scattered across the stars. In a universe of surveillance and schemes, humanity's quietest profession has become its most trusted. The galaxy's greatest intelligence asset had no weapons and no agenda. It had only ears and a promise. One standard year later, the last round sat in the same dock, its lights as warm as ever. Vrelan Kor was thinner, his robes simpler. The ambassador's crest was gone, but his step was steady.
well, look who's back.
One bourbon, please.
Bell didn't ask how he'd been. He just reached for the same bottle, the same glass. Some rituals don't need words.
You look lighter.
I am.
The bourbon poured out, catching the light, just as it had the first time. The galaxy had stayed the first time. The galaxy had changed, but in here, nothing had. Vrelan lifted the glass. He didn't close his eyes this time. He looked right at the man who had saved him without lifting a finger. A nod passed between them, a silent toast. The first of many. The glasses touched with a soft clink, and the bourbon disappeared in small, unhurried sips.
Same taste, same warmth, like nothing ever happened. And yet, everything has.
They didn't talk about the Senate, or the trial, or the years that had passed. The silence between them was full, not empty. The first glass emptied. Vrelan set it down and nudged it forward an inch. Bell refilled it without being asked.
One more. Then I'll go.
Take your time. Stool's yours, as long as you need.
The second glass lasted longer. When it was finally empty, Vrelan stood, the motion slower than it used to be.
Same time next year.
Bell raised a hand. Vrelan walked out into the corridor, and the door slid shut with a whisper. The cantina was quiet again. Bell picked up the used glass, polished it until it shone, and placed it back on the shelf. The same spot, waiting, year after year. The bourbon glass caught the light. 100 evenings blurred together, each one the same, each one different. The two figures at the bar aged together. Vrelan's movements slowed, Bell's hands grew more inked, but the bourbon never changed.
Coming here is like breathing. I don't think about it anymore. I just do. I wrote a memoir. The publisher wants the whole story. But there's one chapter that will never see print.
The one where you got drunk on a human station.
The one where a bartender saved my soul by not saving my career. Number. That story belongs here.
It's not for anyone else. Never was.
He's right. This place is its own kind of vault.
Trust was no longer a question between them. It was simply the air they breathed. The visits became legend among a small circle who knew. But the silence never broke. The last visit came on an evening that felt no different from any other. But Vrelan's step had slowed so much that even the corridor seemed to hold its breath.
This is the last time. I know it, and he will know it too.
He's not coming back after tonight.
Bell poured the bourbon slowly, as if the bottle held more than just whiskey. The glass caught the amber light one last time. Vrelin lifted the glass, but he did not drink. He looked around the cantina, the brass, the polished wood, the human heart of it all.
Thank you for listening.
Bell nodded. For the first time, his eyes glistened, but he did not look away. The silence that followed was not empty. It held everything they had never needed to say. Vrelin finished his bourbon, set the glass down with care, and stood. The ritual was complete. He did not say goodbye. He simply raised his hand, and Bell raised his, and the door slid shut on the man who had kept a galaxy's worth of secrets. Vrelin's story is one among thousands. Across the galaxy, in quiet bars and cantinas, human bartenders hold the same silence. They pour, they listen, and they never speak a word of what they hear. It's a code older than any treaty. 78% isn't a statistic. It's a foundation of interstellar peace, built on the simple promise that what's shared in trust stays kept. In a universe of surveillance and schemes, humanity's quietest profession has become its most trusted asset. Bell still opens the last round every cycle. The lights flicker on, the glasses gleam, and the bourbon waits. The stool where Vrelin sat is never reserved, but it's always empty when the old Tashran season comes around. The last round still flies. Its engines idle, its lights spill into the cold of space, and its promise remains unbroken. Whatever is said here stays here, always has been, always will. In a galaxy where secrets are currency, the truest keepers never ask for payment. They just pour and listen and keep the silence, and the galaxy is safer for it. Years passed, but the last round never lost its warmth. Bell kept the lights on and the glasses ready. Sometimes a young diplomat would drift in, full of questions about the Tashran ambassador who had confessed everything. They'd point to the empty stool and ask, "Is it true he sat right there?"
True as the bourbon behind me. But what he said here, that's his story to tell.
Bell never said more. He would pour whatever they asked for, and let the silence do the rest. New generations came, but the code held. Not just here, but in every human-run cantina across the galaxy. The stool remained polished and waiting, not for anyone in particular, but for the promise it represented. And when the last call came each night, Bell would wipe down the bar and think of all the secrets it had kept. Whatever was said here, stayed here. Always had, always would, and that was enough. The TSV last round drifted between stars, its amber light a steady beacon against the endless night. Behind it, nebulae bloomed in shades of orange and purple, timeless and indifferent. No weapons, no armor, just a polished mahogany hull and a promise older than any empire. Through the round viewports, a faint silhouette moved, tall, slender, unmistakably Tashran. But it was only a trick of the light. The ship was empty save for a bartender and a glass. In a galaxy of secrets, the truest keepers never needed to speak. They just poured and listened, and let the silence hold what words never could. The glass clinked softly against the bar. The lights dimmed. The hum of engines faded, and the last round slipped into the quiet where it had always belonged.